My sister's new boyfriend teased me at dinner. Everyone laughed. Mom told me to stop making the family look bad. So I let them talk until he brought up his job. Then I took out my phone and watched their smiles disappear. You know that gut-wrenching moment when you realize everything your family stands for is just a meticulously crafted facade? That they'd rather protect a shiny, perfect illusion than face an uncomfortable truth, even if it means sacrificing you? For me, that crushing realization hit me like a train, not once, but twice, culminating in a jaw-dropping showdown at my own sister's wedding. My name is Tyler. I'm 26. And if I could sum up my family in a single brutal sentence, it would be this: image matters more than integrity. I know, it sounds dramatic, but if you've ever had a mom who cared more about what the neighbors thought than your actual well-being, or a sibling who could do no wrong even while doing everything wrong, you'd get it. My family isn't abusive, not in the traditional sense. They're just performative. All polished smiles, carefully rehearsed words, and holiday cards that look like Hallmark threw up on them. But scratched just a little beneath that perfect surface, and it's all ego, judgment, and appearances. I've always been the odd one out. The quiet kid with a head full of ideas, more comfortable building websites or tweaking Python scripts than socializing at church brunch. I got a full ride for computer science and spent 4 years quietly building a side project I never told anyone about. Long story short, that project blew up post-graduation. Think a software licensing deal, a modest exit, some decent investments. Nothing flashy, no yachts or Teslas, but enough that I could freelance when I wanted to travel a bit and live well under the radar. And that's exactly how I liked it. My family, however, assumed I was still trying to figure things out. My mom would drop comments like, "You'll find your calling soon, sweetheart," even after I bought a house outright. My sister, Belle, well, don't even get me started. She's 28, a beauty pageant alumna, studied communications, and married her college sweetheart at 23. When that marriage crashed and burned last year, something about irreconcilable ambition differences, her words, not mine, she moved back home for a while. That's when things started getting weird. Suddenly, Belle was this whirlwind of self-reinvention. New hair, new wardrobe, a new Instagram aesthetic, and eventually a new boyfriend. His name was Brad, because of course it was. He looked exactly like someone who'd be named Brad. Tall, tan, manicured beard. Probably uses the phrase alpha energy in earnest. But here's the kicker. My family absolutely adored him. My mom gushed over him like she was auditioning to be his publicist. "He's very successful in finance," she'd purr, sipping her wine one night, as if she actually understood what that meant. My dad, who usually stayed out of it, just nodded and added, "He carries himself well. I met him briefly once at my parents' place. Just a handshake and a, 'Yo, man, what's up' kind of thing, but I kept my distance. Something about him just didn't sit right. Too slick, too rehearsed. And the way Belle looked at him, it wasn't love. It was performance. Like she wanted us all to see her leveling up. I kept my mouth shut, smiled politely, and went back to my place. I figured he'd fade out eventually, like all her other passion projects. I was wrong. A week ago, I got a text from my mom. Family dinner Sunday at 6. Be there. Belle's bringing Brad. No emoji. No, please. Just a commandment. Typical. I thought about skipping. It's not like I'd be missed. But something about the way she phrased it got under my skin. Like it wasn't a request, but an obligation. Like my role was to show up, smile, and let them feel good about being the perfect family. Against my better judgment, I went. Sunday came, and I showed up 10 minutes late, just to mess with their vibe. My mom opened the door, perfectly lipsticked, and gave me a look like I had just walked in wearing rags. "Tyler," she sighed. We were about to start. No hug, no hello. I just nodded and stepped inside. The table was already set. Crystal glasses, cloth napkins, my mom's signature overcooked roast. Everyone else was seated. Dad at the head, sipping scotch. Belle dolled up, and then Brad, lounging back like he owned the place. "Yo, what's up, bro?" he said with that punchable grin. "Nice of you to finally show up." I smiled thinly. Traffic. He snorted. Right. In this town. My mom cleared her throat and waved me to my seat like a stage director pushing the last actor on. We made small talk for a bit. How's work? The weather. Some news about a cousin I barely remembered. And for a while, I thought maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Then the joke started. Brad launched into some story about a coworker who tried to start a side hustle. Dude thought he was going to be the next Zuckerberg, made like $5 and called himself an entrepreneur. Everyone chuckled. My mom laughed the loudest. Belle even wiped a fake tear. I didn't say anything, but Brad looked right at me, like he wanted to see if I'd take the bait. You ever try anything like that, Tyler? I heard you're into that tech stuff. I shrugged. He smirked. You should talk to this guy I know. He teaches coding to high schoolers. Pretty solid gig for folks who can't break into real development jobs. Belle laughed. Ouch, Brad. But she didn't defend me. She just sipped her wine. I glanced at my mom. Nothing. Not even a twitch. So I smiled. Sounds like a great fallback for someone like you. His smirk twitched, but he played it off. Nah, man, I'm good. I'm in finance. You know, real-world stuff. My dad chuckled. We could use a little more of that around here. That stung. It shouldn't have, but it did. I'd helped him set up a budgeting app just last year. Literally automated half his finances. But sure, Brad, Mr. Finance Guy, was the real deal. I stayed quiet for the rest of the meal. Let them bask in their smug little echo chamber. But inside, my mind was spinning. I knew something they didn't. Something Brad definitely didn't want them to know. Because earlier that week, on pure instinct, I Googled him. Just one of those hunches I couldn't ignore. And what I found, well, let's just say his definition of finance was a little more flexible than most. But I didn't say anything. Not yet. I waited. I let them talk. And then, right after dessert, Brad opened his mouth again, and that's when everything shifted. You know that feeling when you're sitting at a table, and everyone's laughing at something, but it's not funny to you? Not even remotely. It's not just that you don't get the joke. It's that you're the joke, and everyone knows it, and they're perfectly fine with it. That was me, picking at a piece of dry roast beef, while Brad practically held court, like he was some motivational speaker hosting a family TED Talk. And they ate it up. Belle was clinging to every word like he was reading out stock tips straight from heaven. My dad leaned in every time Brad spoke, nodding like a bobblehead. And my mom, she had that glassy-eyed look she used to reserve for country club ladies with doctor husbands. I just sat there, mostly quiet, watching unfold like a spectator at my own humiliation. So anyway, Brad said, patting his stomach and pushing his plate forward like a satisfied king. Our firm's launching a new algorithmic fund next quarter. Real cutting-edge stuff. You wouldn't believe the amount of back-end work I've had to oversee. Back-end work? I asked mildly, twirling my fork. He glanced at me. Yeah, quantitative models, predictive analytics, finance nerd stuff, you know. He chuckled like he just told a good joke. Oh, sure, I said. Sounds complex. It is, he said. You ever think about getting into real business? Or is the dream still coding in your pajamas and drinking Red Bull at 2 a.m.? Belle laughed like it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. Brad, stop, she giggled, though she clearly didn't want him to. Tyler's always been more of a passion project kind of guy. My mom didn't laugh this time. She gave me the look. That tight-lipped, passive-aggressive mom look that could suck the air out of a room. Tyler, she said, we've talked about this. You have to let people tease you sometimes. It's how we connect. I blinked. Tease or belittle? Her tone hardened. Don't make a scene. And there it was. The line I'd heard 1,000 times growing up. Don't make a scene. Translation. Don't make us look bad. Don't make us uncomfortable. Don't disrupt the illusion. I leaned back in my chair. Didn't realize being mocked at dinner counted as bonding. Brad raised an eyebrow. It's all in good fun, man. No need to get defensive. I didn't respond. I just stared at him long enough that his confident smirk faltered for a split second. Then my dad broke the tension. All right, let's move on. Tyler, you doing anything interesting these days? I knew he didn't actually care. It was a lifeline disguised as small talk, a way to neutralize the moment. Working on a few projects, I said vaguely. Keeping busy. Brad snorted again, his default setting, apparently. What kind of projects? Or is that top secret? I looked at him. He didn't blink. He was trying to humiliate me again. Before I could say anything, my mom sighed loudly like I was the problem. Tyler, please, she said in that disappointed teacher voice. Can we not do this tonight? You're making things awkward. I froze. Everyone turned their eyes toward me. I was making things awkward. Not Brad, who'd been goading me nonstop. Not Belle, who giggled through every jab like it was open mic night at a comedy club. Me. I felt something in my chest twist. Something familiar and heavy and bitter. The same feeling I used to get in high school when Belle would throw a tantrum over something she did wrong, and I get grounded for not being the bigger person. The same feeling I had when I got a full scholarship to a school 3 states away and my mom said, "You'll change your mind, sweetie. You don't want to leave your family, do you?" Like I was selfish for wanting a life of my own. I clenched my jaw. "Sure," I said tightly. "Let's not make things awkward." The conversation moved on. They joked about mutual friends, vacations, some neighbor's dog. I tuned most of it out. I was barely listening, just nodding when needed, sipping my water, keeping my expression flat. But inside, the storm was building. Because that wasn't just a comment or two. That was years of quiet contempt, wrapped in fake smiles and forced laughter, bubbling up in the open. That was every time I was overlooked, dismissed, told be quieter, smaller, more agreeable. And now there was a shiny new golden boy at the table. One who could say whatever he wanted as long as he looked good doing it. Then came the moment. Dessert had been cleared. Store-bought cheesecake my mom pretended she baked. And the wine had done its work. My dad leaned back with a satisfied grunt, and Belle was scrolling through her phone, showing Brad something on Instagram. "So anyway," Brad said suddenly, looking up from her screen, "I actually gave a talk last week on fintech disruption. My team's been working with this new predictive analytics firm, Startup Stream or something like that. Tiny little dev company. Barely anyone's heard of them. They've got good tech, though we're probably going to buy their platform outright in a few months." I set my glass down slowly. "Startup Stream?" I asked, calm, even. "Yeah," Brad said. "You've heard of them?" "A bit," I said. "What's your involvement exactly?" He grinned. "I'm kind of guy who does the talking, front-facing. I smooth the deals, make sure the numbers align. Some of the execs don't like working directly with the code people. Gets too technical." "The code people?" I repeated deadpan. "Yeah," he said, clearly not catching the tone. "No offense, but those guys aren't exactly business-minded. Brilliant in their own way, sure, but not cut out for the big table." The big table, I echoed, and I could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on me now. Belle was watching with a nervous smile. My dad looked puzzled. My mom was frowning. Brad kept going. "Anyway, we'll probably fold their tools into our infrastructure and maybe hire a few of their devs if they can keep up. It's a win-win." I didn't say anything for a beat, just reached slowly into my pocket and pulled out my phone. "What are you doing?" my mom asked sharply, her tone already accusatory. I ignored her, opened my email, scrolled for a moment, found the one I was looking for. "Startup Stream," I said. "That predictive analytics firm. The one your company is about to buy." Brad raised his eyebrows. "Yeah, cool," I said, holding up the screen. "Because I own it." Silence. Dead, heavy, complete silence. The room froze, like someone had hit pause on a remote. Brad's smirk melted into confusion, then something that looked very much like panic. My mom blinked. "What are you talking about?" I stood up slowly, not raising my voice, not changing my tone. "Startup Stream is my company. I built it. I licensed our core product to 3 separate hedge funds last year, and one of them is the firm you work for. I've had 3 meetings with your department heads. I didn't recognize your name because you weren't in any of them." Brad was pale now. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Belle looked like she'd just witnessed a car crash in real time. My dad sat up straighter. "Wait, what?" I didn't mention it because I knew how it would go. I said, "I knew no one would believe me. Just like every time I try to share something real, you all treated it like a phase, a joke, something to roll your eyes at." My mom finally found her voice. "You mean to tell me you own a tech company? Since when?" I looked at her. "Since 3 years ago. You never said anything. Would it have mattered if I did?" I asked. "You made your minds up a long time ago." Brad stood now, too, his confident energy replaced with something twitchy and uncomfortable. "Look, man, I didn't know, right? I cut in. Because if you did, you wouldn't have said half the things you did tonight. You probably wouldn't have said anything at all." He glanced at Belle like she was supposed to save him. She just stared at the table. I looked around one last time at the room, at the people who were supposed to be my family. There's a special kind of silence that happens when people realize the version of you they built in their heads doesn't match reality. It's not the quiet of reflection or regret. It's the stunned, gaping stillness of ego being rewired in real time. That's what I saw at that table. Brad's jaw tightened. My mom blinked like someone had unplugged her, and she was rebooting. Belle looked at me with this weird cocktail of confusion, embarrassment, and something dangerously close to shame. And my dad, he just sat back like a man watching his house tilt on its foundation. And I was standing there, phone in hand, pulse thudding, heart pounding. Not out of pride, not even revenge, but from years of pent-up words finally bursting out. From the sheer exhaustion of playing small for people who had never once thought to ask what I was building when I disappeared into my room for hours. They only saw a boy with a laptop, never a man with a plan. I could have dropped everything right then. I could have gone for the throat, explained in excruciating detail just how much Brad didn't know, how his firm had been lowballing us for weeks, how he hadn't even been in the meeting loops. But I didn't, because something inside me, maybe the last splinter of the boy who once tried to please everyone, told me it wasn't worth it. Not right now. So instead, I just said it. The one sentence that made the room implode. I'm selling Startup Stream. The deal closes Friday. My mom gasped. You're what? It's been in the works for months. I signed the papers last week. Belle blinked. Wait, like selling? Selling for how much? I looked at her for a long moment. Enough. Brad made a choked noise. To who? I looked at him. A cold affirmation. That's not yours. And then I walked out. Didn't wait for dessert. Didn't say goodbye. Just left them sitting in the dining room like mannequins caught mid-conversation. That night, I didn't sleep much. You'd think it would be cathartic walking out like that. And part of it was. But there was something else. Something heavier. I kept replaying their faces, their silence. The weight of those years I spent hiding my success because I didn't want to be that guy. The arrogant tech bro. The I made it and now I'm better than you guy. I never wanted to rub anything in anyone's face. But they had no problem rubbing me in the dirt. And now I had nothing left to prove to them. But here's the truth. Walking away doesn't mean you don't carry the bruises. The days after the dinner were oddly quiet. No texts, no calls. Not even a passive-aggressive, let's talk from my mom. I half expected a guilt trip or a sudden flood of messages pretending it never happened. But no, just silence, which was fine at first. But loneliness has this way of echoing louder when it follows disappointment. And I wasn't immune to it. I didn't spiral. I'm not going to pretend I collapsed into a pit of despair. But I felt adrift hollow, like I'd snapped a rubber band that had been stretched for too long, and now didn't know what to do with the slack. I buried myself in the sale. The paperwork was brutal. Even with lawyers and consultants, selling a company you built from the ground up is like gutting your own house. Ripping out floorboards, checking every crevice, making sure no rotting beams remain. But it gave me structure, purpose. And then Friday came. Signed the final docs at 10:07 a.m. Got a confirmation ping a minute later. Just like that, it was done. I stared at my laptop screen for a long time. My bank account reflected a number that didn't feel real. Enough zeros to make my high school economics teacher proud. Enough to change my life 10 times over. Enough to disappear if I wanted to. But instead of celebrating, I closed the laptop and went for a walk. I ended up at this little coffee shop downtown. I used to work at during college. They still made the same burn espresso. Still had the same wobbly table near the window. I sat there for a good hour, watching people walk by, wondering what came next. That's when the text came from Belle. Hey, you around? I stared at it, considered deleting it. But something in me, curiosity, maybe stupidity, typed back, yeah. She sent an address. Not our parents' house, her place. The apartment she'd been crashing in since the divorce. I thought about it for a while, then paid for my coffee, stood up, and walked there. She answered the door in sweats and a hoodie. No makeup, no performance, just Belle, the version I hadn't seen since we were kids, sharing cereal in the mornings before school. She didn't say anything for a second, then softly, "You want to come in?" I nodded. Her place was small, messy, half-unpacked boxes in the corner, a forgotten wine glass on the counter. She gestured to the couch, and we sat. "Look," she started. I didn't know about the company, about anything. I stayed quiet. She fidgeted with the drawstring of her hoodie. Brad's, well, you saw what he's like. I thought he was a stable, confident guy after the divorce. I wanted someone to get me, you know? I raised an eyebrow. So, you brought him to dinner to parade him around. Her cheeks flushed. I didn't expect him to be that bad. And I didn't expect you to drop a nuke like that. I didn't plan to, I said honestly. But he kept pushing and no one stopped him. Belle sighed. That's kind of how we are, huh? We perform. We keep up appearances. We don't rock the boat. I nodded. Yeah, and the boat's been sinking for years. She didn't respond for a bit. Then, Mom's freaking out. Not just about what happened, about what she missed. She called me yesterday crying, saying she failed you somehow. I almost laughed. Now she notices. She's not great at saying sorry, Belle admitted. She thinks if she ignores it long enough, it resets. Yeah, that's familiar. I'm not asking you to forgive her, she said, but maybe just talk to her. She's not sleeping. Dad's pretending everything's fine. But I heard him telling Uncle Ray he embarrassed the family. I looked at her. I embarrassed the family. She nodded, wincing. That's the story they're telling themselves. Yeah, figures. We talked for a while longer. She apologized again, not performatively this time. It felt real, human, vulnerable. And I found myself softening just a little, because despite everything, she was my sister. And maybe, just maybe, she was finally starting to see me as more than the family's punching bag. I left without promising anything. I didn't text Mom. I didn't call Dad. Instead, I booked a trip. 2 weeks, no laptop, no work, no family. Just me, a cabin near the coast, and a lot of empty time to figure out what I wanted. And you know what? It was the best thing I ever did. I hiked. I read books. I cooked for myself. I sat on the porch at night and listened to the wind. No judgment, no expectations, just stillness. And slowly, piece by piece, something inside me started rebuilding, not with loud declarations or Instagram quotes. Quietly, privately, I started thinking about my next steps. Not for money, not for prestige, but for me. I'd already won the game. My family didn't even know I was playing. Now, it was time to stop playing for them altogether. By the time I got back, I had a plan. Not for revenge. Not for proving them wrong. For freedom. But of course, nothing stays quiet for long. Because when I returned, I found a letter waiting for me. No return address. Inside, a wedding invitation. Belle and Brad. And a little handwritten note from my mom. We hope you'll come. Family is everything. Let's not let one dinner ruin that. I must have read that note 5 times. Let's not let one dinner ruin that. Like it was some tiny hiccup. Like it was a slightly awkward moment to brush under the rug next to all the other things they'd conveniently forgotten. I held the invitation in one hand, the note in the other, and for a second, I just stood there in my hallway, surrounded by silence. The kind of silence that screams. I wasn't angry. Not immediately. What I felt was colder, clearer. A clean, sharp understanding that the people who were supposed to know me best still didn't know me at all. Family is everything. That was rich. Because if family was everything, maybe they should have started treating me like something. I sat down at the kitchen counter, flicked the invitation open again, and scanned the details. The wedding was 2 months away. Garden ceremony. Formal dress. Dinner and dancing at a boutique hotel about an hour outside the city. RSVP by the end of the month. My name was handwritten on the envelope in my mother's looping cursive. Like that somehow made it more personal. Like she hadn't ghosted me for weeks after that dinner, only to resurface now that there were flower arrangements and guest lists to finalize. I set the invitation down and stared at the ceiling. Then I smiled. Not a big, smug grin, just a quiet one. Because for the first time in a long time, I felt something new. Not bitterness, not sadness. Leverage. They wanted me at that wedding badly. Not because they missed me, or because they'd suddenly had some revelation about how terribly they'd treated me. No, they wanted the image, the illusion. They wanted to be able to tell their church friends, oh yes, the whole family was there, Tyler too. They wanted me to play the part, wear the suit, shake hands, pretend everything was fine, so their house of cards didn't collapse. And I had no intention of giving them that. Not for free. The next few days were productive in a way I hadn't felt since the early startup stream days. I don't know if it was the spite or the clarity, but I woke up every morning with a sense of purpose. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was moving, planning, positioning. Step 1, information. I didn't trust Brad. That was a given. But something about the way he'd fumbled at dinner, the way he tried to spin his involvement with Startup Stream, it didn't sit right with me. So I started digging. At first, I kept it surface level. LinkedIn, Twitter, old company websites, the usual. But Brad was smarter than I'd initially assumed. His digital footprint was carefully managed, polished, curated. He looked like a dream candidate on paper. But I'd been in tech long enough to know how easy it is to fake it when you know which buzzwords to use. So I called a friend. Well, not so much a friend as an old contact. Ethan, a cybersecurity guy I'd worked with on a project 2 years back. He owed me a favor. "You want me to background a finance bro?" he said, amused. "I want to know who I'm dealing with," I replied, "and I want it off the books." 2 days later, he sent me a file. It wasn't damning, not in the criminal sense, but it was revealing. Turns out Brad had job hopped more than anyone in my family realized. He'd bounced between startups, advisory roles, and vague consulting gigs that never seemed to last more than 6 months. He'd failed upward, thanks to charm and connections. The fintech company he currently worked for, he wasn't in upper management. He was in sales. Not strategy, not analytics. Just sales. Which isn't inherently shady, but it made the things he'd said at dinner sound a whole lot more hollow. More importantly, he had a history of bad investments. Real estate, crypto, a few e-commerce ventures that never made it past launch. He wasn't broke, but he wasn't the high-powered executive he pretended to be either. That explained a lot. I filed that info away for later. Step 2, allies. I wasn't planning to go nuclear. Not yet, but I wanted options. So I called up Ava. Ava was my ex. Well, sort of. We dated casually during the early start of stream years, stayed friends after, and she'd always had a sharp sense for people. More importantly, she'd been at that dinner a year ago, back when Belle brought her previous boyfriend to test waters. Ava saw the same patterns I did. The performative charm, the fragile ego. She'd even predicted that relationship wouldn't last. And she was right. When I explained what happened with Brad, she didn't hesitate. "I'm in," she said. "Whatever you need." "You might regret that," I said. "I won't," she replied. "Besides, I owe your sister for that passive-aggressive meltdown she pulled on me over brunch." Fair enough. We met at a coffee shop later that week to game things out. "So, what's the plan?" she asked, sipping her iced latte. "Expose him at the altar? Dramatic speech? Hidden camera?" I laughed. "Nothing that flashy yet. I want to see how deep this goes. I think he's using my sister. Maybe for money, maybe for clout. I don't know, but something's off." Ava nodded. "You think she knows?" "She's too wrapped up in the idea of winning to notice. And your mom?" I smirked. "She'll ignore anything that threatens the aesthetic." Ava leaned forward. "Then let's give them exactly what they want. A perfect, peaceful wedding with you front and center." I paused. "You think I should go?" "I think you should RSVP. Yes," she said. "And while you're smiling for the cameras, we start laying the groundwork. Quietly, surgically. If Brad's hiding something, we'll find it. And if he's not, well, we'll be polite. But if he is..." She let the sentence hang. I nodded. "Okay," I said. "Let's play." I RSVP'd that night, attending +1. No one texted me to acknowledge it, but I knew they saw it. The next few weeks were all about prep. I reconnected with people, talked to mutual acquaintances, slid into the background of Brad's digital world, and started observing. Ava helped me scrub through social media and identify patterns. Weird inconsistencies in timelines, travel dates that didn't add up, comments from friends that hinted at side ventures no one had heard of. Then one night, Ava messaged me. "Found something." I clicked the link she sent. It was a forum thread, a niche finance board buried beneath layers of SEO fog. And in it, Brad, posting under pseudonym, but not cleverly enough. He was shilling some kind of crypto-based investing tool, half-baked, full of buzzwords, and clearly not legal. The thread was full of red flags. Promises of guaranteed returns, aggressive tactics, and a few posts from burned users claiming they never got their money back. It wasn't a smoking gun, but it was definitely smoke. And smoke meant fire. I sent the thread to Ethan. 2 days later, he confirmed it. Brad had quietly registered a shell company 6 months ago. He'd been funneling money into it from personal accounts and possibly from friends and family, probably promising them a big return on a non-existent product. That's when I knew this wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about protection. My sister was walking into a marriage with a man who might be scamming people out of their savings. And she had no idea. My parents were throwing a wedding that could be followed by lawsuits, debt collectors, or worse. And no one had the spine to see it but me. So I made a choice. I wouldn't stop the wedding. Not yet, but I would be ready. Because the day they asked me to smile for the cameras, I'd be smiling with everything in place. The day of the wedding arrived like the final act of a play everyone had rehearsed for, but didn't quite understand. The venue was exactly what I expected. Tastefully extravagant. White orchids wrapped around archways, gold-trimmed invitations handed to guests by teenage cousins in stiff suits. A jazz trio played softly near the garden entrance as people milled around with flutes of champagne, their conversations as shallow as a decorative koi pond near the buffet table. I pulled up in a matte charcoal rental, sleek, understated, professional. Ava stepped out beside me, wearing a deep green dress that made at least 3 of my mother's friends freeze mid-sentence. She looped her arm through mine and whispered, "You ready?" I didn't answer right away. I just looked across the garden where Brad was shaking hands and flashing his practiced smile, where my mother was giving last-minute directions to the wedding planner, like a general coordinating a battlefront, where Belle, stunning in a lace ivory gown, flawless makeup, that signature pageant smile, stood in the middle of it all like a porcelain doll no one dared to touch. Then I nodded. "Yeah," I said, "let's finish this." The ceremony was scheduled to start at 4 p.m., right as the sun dipped low enough to make everything look golden in photos. Everyone was dressed to impress, and for the most part, they succeeded. I recognized some faces. Old neighbors, family friends, a few extended relatives who only ever showed up for free food and gossip fodder. I kept my distance during the pre-ceremony mingling, nursing a glass of water while watching Brad. He was in full politician mode. Charming, laughing, boasting just enough to make people feel special without revealing anything of substance. If you didn't know better, you'd think he was the groom of the century. But I knew better. So did Ava. She nudged me around 3:30. "He's still working the room. You sure we wait until after?" "Yes," I said. "Let the illusion complete itself." We took our seats near the front, second row, behind the immediate family. My mom spotted me and gave a brittle smile. Dad nodded stiffly. Belle didn't look at me once as she walked down the aisle, hand clutched around a bouquet, eyes laser-focused on the altar. I noticed a tightness in her jaw. Not nerves, restraint. Brad, to his credit, looked every bit the charming groom. Clean-cut tucks, subtle cufflinks, that ever-present confidence. The ceremony was short, mostly fluff, a few tears from my aunt, some overly long personal vows that sounded suspiciously like they were AI-generated. Then came the reception. That was the real performance. Tables set with custom place cards, a choreographed first dance, the kind of menu that name-dropped the farm where the chickens were raised. My mom gave a toast about love, perseverance, and building a future together. My dad followed up with a slightly awkward but heartfelt speech about welcoming Brad into the family. I waited. I watched. And then, just as dessert was being served, when the wine had settled in and the guests were loose and smiling, I stood. "May I say a few words?" I asked, tapping a spoon against my glass. The room turned. The MC hesitated, glanced at my mom, who looked frozen in place. Brad smiled tightly. "Of course, man. Go ahead." I stepped up to the mic. "Thanks," I said. "I'll keep this short. I just wanted to say how happy I am for my sister. Belle, you look beautiful. I may not say it enough, but you've always been the strongest person I know." She blinked, caught off guard, then nodded slowly, unsure where this was going. I turned to Brad. "And Brad, I have to admit, I wasn't sure about you at first. But over the past few weeks, I've done some homework. Dug into your background, your investments, your side projects. It's been enlightening." The room shifted. Laughter died. Heads tilted. Brad stiffened. "What are you?" I held up a hand. "It's okay. I'm not here to ruin anything. I'm just here to tell the truth." I pulled out my phone, connected it to the projector the venue had set up for the photo slideshow. The screen flickered, and a web browser appeared. I opened a PDF titled Investor Communication Records, Credence Coin 2021 to 2023. Then another file, screenshots of Brad's forum posts under a pseudonym. Next, a short video clip, a recorded Zoom pitch where Brad promised guaranteed returns to a group of unsuspecting investors. His face, his voice, gasps, silence. I let it play for 20 seconds before pausing it. "Brad has been running a low-level Ponzi scheme for the past 2 years," I said calmly. "It's not big enough to hit headlines, but it's enough to ruin people, friends, family, anyone who bought into the fantasy." People turned, faces twisted. My uncle whispered something to my dad, who turned sheet white. Belle stood, clutching her bouquet like a weapon. "Tyler, what is this?" "It's what I tried to tell you," I said, softer now. "He's not who he says he is. I wanted to warn you sooner, but I needed proof." Brad moved toward me. "You little—" I said, holding up another paper. "I've already submitted this to the SEC. This is just a courtesy." His face drained of color. But you know what's really sad? I continued, facing the crowd again. It's not just a fraud. It's that no one in this family wanted to believe I could be right, that I could have value beyond being the quiet one. I was told to stop making the family look bad, to be polite, to let things go. I looked at my mother. Her hands trembled around her champagne glass. But today, I chose not to be quiet. Today, I chose truth over comfort, and I think you all needed to see it. I stepped back from the mic. Brad was frozen. Belle looked like someone had ripped the ground from beneath her. The wedding planner hovered at the edge of the room, pale and twitching. Then came the fallout. My mom stood up. Tyler, we need to talk. I'm done talking, I said. You only listen when it's convenient. Tyler, wait, Belle said, her voice cracking. Why now? I turned to her. Because you deserve better, even if you couldn't see it. Then I walked out. Ava followed, heels clicking beside me. We didn't speak until we reached the car. She finally asked, "Do you feel better?" I took a long breath. The air was cooler out here, quieter. I feel free. We drove off. Later, I heard Brad was detained for questioning that same week. The SEC had apparently been circling for months. My documentation just gave them the final piece. Belle annulled the marriage in under a month. My parents went radio silent for a while, but eventually a card arrived in the mail. No note, just a card, blank inside. I tossed it. Some endings don't need closure. Some endings are just clean, like the click of a door finally locking behind you. And sometimes, silence is the loudest victory of all.